My name is Jayakumar Hariharan. I'm an executive coach, speaker, and author. Stories That Shift is an intimate and up-close conversation with CXOs and practitioners of various disciplines about what makes them tick. Stories are not what we say, stories are who we are. And today I have a very important guest on the show today. The India and South Asia president of Rolls-Royce, Kishore Jayaraman. Kishore, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jay. Good to be here.
It's not every day that I get to have a chat with an OBE awardee, so thanks for making my day. With that out of the way, it would be great to get some context about Rolls-Royce India. What is it in the business of? And it would be lovely if you could take us on that journey.
Sure. To start with, I always ask the question, do you think we are in automobiles, Jay?
That's a biased question because I know the answer, but
exactly.
You're
Let
right.
us leave it to the audience to decide if they thought we were in automobiles or we were in aerospace.
Gotcha.
So we are a power industrial technology company providing power, right? We power aircrafts, we power ships, we power defense equipment. So we are in the business of power and propulsion.
Amazing.
Right? And we have three businesses. We have the civil aerospace business, we have the defense business, and we have the power systems business. In the civil aerospace business, we power the wide-body aircraft. And whenever you enter an aircraft and you see two aisles in the aircraft, that's a wide-body aircraft. And we power those aircrafts. We have a very healthy market share. In terms of defense, and if I look at Indian defense, we have three streams. One is the combat aircraft, other is the trainer aircraft, and the other one is the transport aircraft. In all these three classes in India, we provide engines for the Indian aerospace sector. We have well over 300 engines in India supporting defense. We have well over 750 engines in this country from both the civil and defense point of view. We also power the Arjun tanks.
Lovely.
We also power the destroyers, the frigates, and we power the aircraft carriers, which we are not yet doing for the Indian aircraft carriers, which will happen hopefully sometime soon. So these three businesses, and if I look at it and say the past, present, and the future, we've been in India for about 90 years. We started off in 1932 with the Karachi Mail. Then we started off with the first aircraft for the Indian Air Force. We started off as the first aircraft for the Indian Navy. And since that time, we have grown from strength to strength. We created a collaboration with HAL back in 1956. And it was a technology transfer agreement that we did with HAL right from those days. And our relationship with HAL today is as strong as it was when we formed that partnership in 1956. In 2005, we looked at the capabilities in India. More importantly, in those days, we looked at the capacity in India. And we said with this absolute phenomenal talent coming out, the young population that's coming out in India, we have to be able to leverage that for our benefit globally. So we came with the engineering services model with TCS and Quest. And we found it so good and the talent so capable that we created our own engineering team of 500 people here in Bangalore. And so the journey evolved from 2005 till today. And today we have two joint ventures in the manufacturing field. We have well over 2,000 engineers that support us globally. We have over 1,000 employees here that are Rolls-Royce employees in various functions. We have a very, very strong digital team that supports all our businesses globally. We have a very strong presence in the GBS, as we call it, which is mostly global business services function, and we continue to grow that. And then we have aspirations for a future where it is not about just selling in India. Everybody knows the current story of Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliance. And, for us, that's been there for a while. We have made in India through the technology transfer agreement. We have assembled in India in the past. So what we really want to do today is we got to generate IP in India. We got to co-create in India. The talent anymore is not about capacity and cost arbitrage.
Right.
The talent is about capability and value arbitrage. That's the space we are in. And that will enable India to achieve Atmanirbhar Bharat. That's the future for us. In civil aerospace, wide-body aircrafts are coming in. More and more infrastructure will be put in. More and more airports. The demand is way outstripping the supply today. And at one point in time, we believe we will be so integral in the civil aerospace space. We will have sales of aircraft. We'll have servicing of aircraft. We will have the ability to optimize flight patterns, help the customers, and be an integral part of the civil aerospace ecosystem in India. Power systems business. We provide backup power. We provide standby power as well as sort of full-time power generation. That space is going to evolve into alternate fuels.
Gotcha.
And that space, when it evolves into the alternate fuels, we'll be ready for it. We are not just diesel engine, producers. We are building a future with sustainability as a bridge that will enable our products to power responsibly. That includes hydrogen as a fuel. That includes multiple other fuels that we are testing, and we are in advanced stages in aerospace, in power systems, and all those successes will play into our defense businesses as well. So at the end of the day, the past was great. The present is greater, but the future is yet to come and will be the greatest.
I'm getting a solid sense of that because I've heard you even in your other conversations speak about the 3Ds in India, the democracy, the demographic dividend, and
demand.
The demand. So it's really nice to see that you're bullish, and I really love the fact that you spoke about cost arbitrage, because that's pretty much been our model till now, and it's not a great example to show to the rest of the world unless you get into IP creation.
Yep.
And it's so nice to really hear you talk about that. What has the last 6 months been like? What would you like to celebrate? Anything special? It could be business, it could be personal, it could be...
Well, both sides.
All right.
I think business side, being able to participate in the Air India order is really a privilege for us.
Wow.
Because Air India is always special for India. In the civil aerospace side, Air India is everything. So for us to be able to have our XWB 1000s, the largest order in the world for that particular type of aircraft with Air India is very special for me.
If that is not a big one, then what is?
Now the second one is, it's with Tata's.
Okay.
Another iconic organization. So partaking with our technology with Air India and working with a company like the Tata's. And third, not definitely last but never the least, is having the ability from now on to participate with scale in the Indian civil aerospace market.
Beautiful.
Right.
I think the India story is a wonderful story right now, Kishore, and the future is rife with possibilities. And one of every now and then you hear orders of, aviation companies booking really, really huge orders. And it's become a little bit of the India story in global aviation as well. And while we know broadly what the contours are that are causing this, I'd like a little more granular perspective on industry majors like yourself who are betting on this upswing.
Yeah, when I look at air travel, when I was growing up, I think at one point there was 13 aircraft in this country, total. And I think one of the aircrafts was piloted by the son of the Prime Minister then.
Wow.
Right? So it was a sector which was niche, a sector that was far away from the reach of many, many, many people. Today, it is at the reach of every person. That's the first thing, the availability. The second thing is the mentality of people. The new generation, the working population, cares more about life, wants to fit into life as much as they can, not just work, wants to live today, not focus on the future, and want to do things they want to do, not things that they have to do. That mindset, I think, is also causing a big difference. The third thing is, I think as India's GDP grows, the need for business to be able to do things more, in other words, productivity improves when the travel time reduces.
Sure.
So naturally, it's only aerospace. You will see this trend continuing on. I don't think it's going to stop for at least another 20 years. The working population in India of 15 to 64, as Ruchir Sharma says, is the strongest in India. It is the best in India. That will keep driving the GDP. And as long as a platform is created for proper employment, proper education, and proper ability to have credible, capable jobs, there's no stopping India. And if there's no stopping India, then there's no stopping aerospace.
Absolutely.
That's the way I look at it.
No, I think it's a great story to go hand in hand, right? One is to kind of say a rising tide raises all boats, but it is also true. I mean, yes, when the country grows, when there is greater disposable income, most industries, when they're well poised to manage and, work with that growth, they will eventually catch up on that tide. A little bit of a global outlook looking towards India kind of a thing, just for my understanding. There is a beautiful book that Ravi Venkatesan, ex-chairman of Microsoft, wrote quite a while ago, where this was a long time ago, I'm sure things have changed, but he said Indian counterparts of global organizations, the business best case scenario would amount to about 10% of the global pie.
Mm-hmm.
Is that figure changing? Is the contribution of India's marketplace to a global major of any product, domain, whatever, is there an interesting, are we seeing green shoots in the percentage of contribution changing as yet?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely, yes. The reason is simple, right? First of all, ease of doing business.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't there.
Mm.
Okay. Today, it might not be where people want it to be, but it definitely is multiples better than where it was.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
So the second most important thing is competitive federalism and collaborative federalism. So I think you see the states are all vying for business.
Yes.
Competing for businesses. There is hunger. Right? So every state wants employment growing, industries growing. They want to contribute more and more to the global economy. Third, a lot of multinationals were not sure where India was going to be, what India was going to be. They see a stable government. They see a stable democracy. They see a stable demand. They see ease of doing business. And combine that to the statement of Atmanirbhar Bharat. I want self-reliance. I want to use my capability. I'm not your cost arbitrage.
Yep.
I'm your value arbitrage. And I want to know how. I want to know why. That's the reason why India will again continue to grow, has grown from where it was. I came to India 17 years back. And from that day to today, I can tell you it's just phenomenal amount of
and what growth. A place to be in at this point in time, right? Amazing.
I came to India for 2 years and I'm here in 20 years.
Beautiful. So, beautiful. A little curious about, bring the experience back home, about the Rolls-Royce offering in the marketplace. And you've been a Rolls-Royce veteran for a very long time. You would be the best person to answer this. What is the Rolls-Royce experience. And you could feel free to chunk it across employees, across stakeholders, across government, across brand, across a thought in somebody's head. Feel free to, kind of take us on this journey. But it would be lovely to see what sets Rolls-Royce apart.
Well, it's always the culture of the company.
Wow.
Right? Because at the end of the day, every company has its unique DNA. And when we look at our DNA, it comes down to the work-life balance. It comes down to treating people with respect. It comes down to operating ethically. It comes down to making sure we do everything possible to be safe for every stakeholder. And it comes down to us making sure we are relevant, we are competitive, and we provide opportunities for ourselves to grow as a company and for our employees to grow with the company. And I think these all have to come together.
Yes.
If they all don't come together, at the end of the day, even one or two pieces are missing, the company won't grow, or the people don't grow, or the culture is caustic. It doesn't work. And I've been with Rolls-Royce now for 12 years. And before this, I was with GE for 23 years. Both outstanding companies. And I think in both these companies, the learning is the balance. Right? Amazing. I look at it and I say that balance is what makes great companies greater.
So would you say this is a story that starts within and then spreads to the world around? If employees have a great experience of, togetherness, about trust, about being empowered, they automatically will get into making great products, and great products will eventually create a great platform for your products to be sold.
Look, technology is the key, right? If you're a technology company, you'd better have technology that hunts.
Which is where I was kind of getting to, Kishore, because this is a little bit of a curveball. Please allow me to go at it. So there are various management principles, various organizational thinking, various pundits have espoused various theories. And one of that is, what's the culture of your organization? Mm-hmm. Going back to Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Is in today's world, where tech can make or break your organization, are we seeing a depersonalization? Are we in a situation where I have the most killer tech, and that's really the core of my existence in the world? People are replaceable.
We should not forget the basics, Jay. At the end of the day, people created this technology.
Of course.
And they created this technology for their betterment. And they created this technology to use it. And if the technology becomes a threat to them, how can technology exist without people? So my theory is you might have a phase when technology seems to be taking over jobs, taking over people's lives. It does. But eventually, it's the humanity, it's people that will continue to control it. It'll come out in a different form. You can have all the cyber movies coming out, trashing out human population.
Or a dystopian future.
With robots running around town. But I think it's all right now science fiction. Because the basics will never go away. And I think if it gets to a certain point, technology might actually cause disruption, calamity, destruction. But the winner of it all will be humanity.
Gotcha.
That's the way I think about it. It's a very personal opinion. I'm sure 50,000 people will throw stones at it. But that's how I feel about it. And I think if we go back to the basics and say, if we do everything for people, then what are the things my company will do for people? Mm-hmm. If I'm making engines as Rolls-Royce, then those engines have to be safe. They have to be efficient. They have to be reliable. Why? They affect people's lives.
Of course.
They affect profitability of companies which are run by people. They affect the ability for people to go from point A to point B.
Beautiful.
People. So if I look at it and I say, this is why I do what I do, and it's for the people, things become looking very different now.
Absolutely. It puts a spring in your step. It puts a purpose in your direction.
Yep.
Beautiful. I think definitely getting back to basics in terms of providing the right kind of environment for talent to flourish is pretty much more than half the job done.
Correct.
Amazing. I'd love to hear some stories about the Rolls-Royce experience. It could be great employee experiences, great customer experiences. Does anything come to your mind?
Well, there are many, but always which one trumps the other is the question. There are always, with any company, there are always moments which are fantastic, fabulous. And I think in recent history, the way we as a company handled COVID globally was phenomenal. I mean, we as a company struggled because all the airlines shut down. Our company runs when people fly, when aircrafts fly. When that stops, our company stops. But in spite of which, we were able to stand strong, and we had to look at starting from the back end, positioning for the future. When we come out of this crisis, what sort of a company will we be? Right? We had to prevent our people, our good talent, from leaving. And we had to protect the company. So it went down to 3 P's of protect, prevent, and position. And the protect part of things was financial protection, people protection. The prevent part of it was mostly preventing crises for people. Preventing people from falling prey to the financial state of the company. Positioning was about our programs for the future, which all had to be restructured. And so when we looked at it in very simple buckets like those and went about it, I think we were able to actually serve 99% of our employees globally, right, as a very responsible company.
Beautiful.
So that was a very, very proud moment to have been part of the company, helping the company achieve that goal, right? And that's in very recent past. And of course, there's always moments with a technology company where you produce all these technologies, which are, it's not as simple as saying ahead of competition. It's as saying that I have created another milestone that's going to last well into the future. For example, the sustainable alternate fuels, the electric aircraft, right? These are things that trigger a future that's going to be very different. They tend to be disruptors. The SAF is a journey towards the electric aircraft. But both of those you run parallelly because one is going to take longer than the other. But being able to do it and focus on it and say, we will be able to achieve this with fixed, firm milestones leading us to that end result, I think was a very nicely planned sort of initiative towards our sustainability goals and the net zero initiatives. So I think being part of that, I think, was also fabulous. Right? And I'm thinking of many, many more things. But as we go through this, there's not a single moment, right? Oh, the major thing is us transitioning over from saying we want to sell in India to us saying, no, we just don't want to make in India. Or saying, no, we just want to assemble in India. To us saying, we want to create IP in India. We started it.
That's bold.
We started it and we said, that's the future. A place like India with so much ambition, with so much need, is going to want to be creating technologies, and the UK government was very supportive of it. Rolls-Royce was very, very forward-thinking about it. And we are working our way with all the authorities in India to make it happen.
Amazing.
Right?
I think all the three are extremely heartwarming. Number one, an organization that kind of hunkers down and protects its people and takes them on that journey, especially when times are tough. shows that it's not just about the purse strings alone, right? I mean, we are in it for the long term. We are invested in, and that kind of bears fruit with, all stakeholders. And second thing is, obviously, sustainability is at the heart of what you're thinking for a couple of things. One is it just makes sense for the planet. Yep. And this constant, I wouldn't say finger pointing, but this idea of politics and business working hand in hand to solve, let's say, it's not an easy problem. It is a complex challenge that's facing the world. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, in the sense that the whole world is a family. If there is, there are challenges, and we're seeing challenges in the area of global warming. And it's really nice to see organizations take that as a really important aspect of planning the future blueprint.
If organizations don't put people at their heart, it's going to be hard. And I'm not saying something that's rocket science here.
Sure.
But I think lots of times with the amount of information available, it is very easy to get confused.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And I think by putting people first, a lot of things come together much more clearly.
Amazing. Which actually leads me into a quick segue into, if you just Google leadership models and leadership practices, there are tons of them. And it's like a smorgasbord of things where you take bits and pieces and you kind of fashion your own leadership journey. What are the fundamental 101 leadership principles that you believe in as of now?
I think number one is passion.
Love it.
Okay. I don't think anybody can excel in anything that they do not have passion for. So I think passion is number one. I think passion without perseverance will just end up being an unrealized dream. Right? And even if you had passion and you have the perseverance, it's always good to, I want to say, I debate between three P's there. Right? And in my head, I'm debating saying that, is it prayers? Because every person can use a little luck.
Beautiful.
Right? Or is it persuasion?
Lovely.
Everybody can have a little
I think that's
support.
a beautiful debate.
Right?
That's a beautiful conundrum. Yes.
And the third one is patience. You have a lot of passion. You're working very hard. But if you don't have the patience, you could end up being frustrated and gone. You work with a lot of passion. You have a lot of perseverance. And if you don't have the support, the persuasion piece, that can also, sort of fade it out. And when both those don't work, I think prayers come handy. So that's what I think.
Though I think it's beautiful, and I kind of I understood why the toggle between the two happened, because I was just reading something really interesting where you were at a cafeteria in Taiwan next to a very, very senior gentleman, and you obviously didn't know how senior he was, and he was having a chance conversation about your career or something, and you must have impressed the hell out of him because circa 3 years down, I think this was a G if I'm not mistaken, he kind of tapped you into that role. He's saying, and you said, this is what I am.
Yeah.
And that chance conversation kind of led him on to believe that you could be the right person for that role, which is where I think the prayers...
Yeah, I don't know if it's prayers there, but I remember that like yesterday. It was at a dinner. We had a team dinner, and he was my bosses. I don't know.
I think you can stop. I think you can stop
forget
at
how
some
many
rung.
layers he was above me. And, he was a very nice person. I was sitting next to him and I was just having this, you have to have some conversation. And I was not one of those, very confident conversationalists at the age of 24. And here he was a very senior gentleman. I know fully well how powerful and senior he is. And we started talking. He made me feel at ease. And I remember that the conversation led between this and that and that. But to be honest, I did not think about working for him. I was not thinking about him giving me a pay raise. I was not thinking about him firing me. I was just having a conversation with another person at the dinner. And just talking about things. And nothing happened. That was it. He left. I left. I continued on my journey. This was 1991. So I remember the exact time. It was August or so. And come 1996, I figured I was going to switch from being a technology person to a commercial person. And he was the head of projects. He ran almost $1 billion worth of projects under him. And so in those days, it was pretty reasonably big number, right?
Still is.
96. So I went to him and I told him, I want to work for you. Interestingly, in that conversation, he remembered our conversation at that dinner that night. Interestingly. And he said, good, I was wondering when you'll come and ask me. And, there was no position under him. Everybody who worked under him was at least 50 plus years old. And I was at that time in 1996, 31 years old. So he created a position for me. And he said, look, this business does not have a project manager. You are an experiment. So go figure out. That's how my journey began on the commercial side. So, it is, in life, a lot of times it's about the honesty, the transparency, and maybe just not being stiff, just being
Love it.
easygoing helps. Because the conversations when I had to go to an interview prepared and everything is a lot more harder than having a conversation for that evening, which happened to be bigger than an interview. Right? So I think those could be considered as lucky moments in life.
Beautiful.
Those are the changing moments sometimes.
It would have been a big transition at that time from tech to getting on to commercial. And what do you think he saw in you when you walked into that formal interview?
Jay, it's a very, 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 very interesting question. What did he see in me? Probably that evening, he saw someone who was not trying to sell himself for an opportunity to grow his career. But he was also a very nice person, a gentleman. He grew many, many, many leaders.
Beautiful.
Right? And I think he saw in me what I did there in Taiwan was a very hard assignment. And I'm sure that people would have told them that he's bold to take this because the chances of failure was very high. And so he probably marked it on those things. I'm speculating here because I really don't know the answer.
Of course.
But the beauty of it was that he recognized that evening and me because I never saw him even once after that. After that evening dinner, I saw him in 1996 when I went to him and said, I want to change. That was the first meeting after that. So he remembered that evening. He said, yeah. Then, so did you ever go back to Kaohsiung after that? That was his question. I said, no. No, I didn't go back. But I to be honest with you, I don't think I had a good answer to it. But I think what he saw was honesty, was probably hard work, was probably simplicity.
Beautiful.
Right? I was not too complicated of trying to play the game.
You were as authentic as they came by. It was not a transactional kind of a conversation. It was not an agenda-led kind of a conversation.
Yeah. It was very simple.
Amazing.
It was very simple.
You did speak about the multiple P theory, about your fundamental leadership principles, and one of them definitely struck a chord in me, which is persuasion.
Yeah.
How does that play out in a leadership repertoire?
Well, persuasion, when I look at it, it's twofold.
Mm-hmm.
One is me as an individual being persuasive about something.
Yes.
And the second one is me as an individual being persuaded to do something. So you got to look at it as two factors.
Brilliant.
Right? When one is being persuasive, the hardest thing is to hold back, because it is easy to tell somebody what to do, because the person asking you in the first place is because you are experienced, you are aged, you are the boss, you have a lot of things that go for you, and the person has come to you, so it's easy to tell them an answer. The hardest part is to make the person challenge that answer. Because if the answer is not challenged, what happens if it's wrong? And if you allow the person that liberty to challenge the answer, then it goes into a world of boss-employee protocols. How do you maintain that balance? How do you maintain that respect or relationship? So being persuasive with somebody else is a very tricky situation. But if played right, it has the biggest benefit of leadership. Being persuaded on the other side is equally tricky, because there are many, many people who will want to persuade the leader to do things a certain way. And if you're not able to differentiate between the real and the oh really, right? I think that'll be a problem. So I think it's leadership. A lot of people talk about many things, and they say this, that. Again, it comes down to the whole thing of people doing the right things. The basics are very simple.
Yeah.
Right? And if we just focus on the outcomes and say, this is what has to be achieved, and then ask the question, what is the right way to achieve it? And then be open to the many different paths that come, one of which could be the right way. It leads much faster to the outcome. And if people are not focused on the outcome, and they are just asking the questions because they want to really find some answer without having that goal in mind constantly in front of the person, it becomes actions, and it becomes kicking the can. It becomes a time-consuming process of much ado about nothing.
Gotcha.
Right. So I try my best. A lot of times I fail still. Is to say, what is the goal? Where am I going with this? And if it leads me to that goal, then fine, we should try it. If it doesn't lead me to the goal, and I'm clear that it doesn't lead me to the goal, apply the principle of persuasion to try and convince the person who came up with the idea that maybe it's not the right idea.
Gotcha.
It is always easy to veto an idea.
Yep.
The hardest part is getting the acceptance. So these things take up a lot of my time. I spend more time thinking about a lot of these things than I actually have to do anything. I got people with sales, I got people with BD, I got people with government relations, with strategy, communications, everything. What I have to think about is, for each and every challenge or complexity, what is it I want to persuade them to do? Or what do I want to be persuaded with? That takes time. And a lot of mind space.
All I can say is I think my practice is in peril right now, because if you're not already a coach, I think you would make a great coach.
Is that an offer?
Kishore, because the first and the foremost thing that you said was extremely graceful when you said, I might know all the answers, or I might know the answer that this individual is seeking. Sometimes keeping it to myself is the best thing I can add in the process, so that the individual finds his or her way by themselves. And which is when you achieve a buy-in, which is why, there is a feeling of oneness in the mission rather than compliance. So you're winning their heart along with their head. I think that's great. And I love the segue, the differential that you brought in about persuasion can and should work both ways. Mm-hmm. Because typically when you talk about persuasion or the art of persuasion for a leader, you always assume that it's an intent, inward to outward kind of a thing. And I'm so happy you brought it home as well. My willingness to be on the other side and my ability to separate the wheat from the chaff, and my willingness to also consider a disagreeable opinion that I might not I might not agree with that, but giving space for that and holding space for that. I think that was very beautiful. Thank you so much for that. That was really interesting. Since we're talking about leadership, I'm an executive coach. I work with CXOs around the world, and leadership behavioral change is a very, very important part of the service that I offer. Is leadership content still being consumed, or is the leadership of today more about doing than learning from various sources? Because as we know, the world has moved on, and there is research to show that apparently our walking speed in cities have increased. And they've done the study in some select cities around the world. The pace at which pedestrians walk has also speeded up. So in a world like this, do leaders have a space and necessity to hold back and consume content as against like karte karte main seekh jaunga? Your thoughts?
If there is no plan to learn, learning happens when and where at its own pace. I think, at least I practice this, where I take about 10% on an average, if you take time to reflect on whether what I did is right or wrong. Right? There are decisions I have to make. Not all decisions are happy decisions.
Sure.
And even if they are happy decisions, was it the right decision? And then the more important question is, why did I come up with this? What drove me to come up with this? Is it because of my feelings, emotions? Or is it because I analyzed it very objectively? The more and more I ask myself these questions, the more and more I find more about myself. And I'll be honest, 50% of the times I don't like what I find.
Wow.
Right? I'm saying, I should not have thought about it from this angle. And that doesn't stop. So I think learning with every instance is a great thing. And so when I have my team, pretty much these days very senior people, a lot of them have gone through life with many more challenges, many more experiences than I have. To be able to make them understand and appreciate the decisions I make without just being subjective somewhere. It means I have to learn from them also. So your question about whether they should just keep doing it or should they learn, I don't think you can learn without experiences. But at the same time, if you don't want to learn, the experiences will not teach you anything.
Beautiful.
Right. And I think that open mind is absolutely essential. And I don't know if it's been coined before, but I keep thinking about it, saying that when you read books, when you listen to a lot of stuff, there is knowledge. When you experience things and you combine that with the knowledge, is when you become wisdom. Right. And I think it's extremely important that we balance it.
So which brings me to a pet peeve of mine. And, there is another adage which goes saying that not all readers become great leaders, but great leaders more often than not are great readers. And consumption of a well-balanced nutrition to your mind, I think, is fundamental to every human being. As in, you can't just consume garbage and expect to come out with great output. And even more so with leaders these days. And I'm sure you meet up with a lot of people. Do you find them going out of the way to consume great content, which, when the rubber hits the road, when they start practicing some element of what they've read or heard about, their journey becomes much more fulfilling, and they start discovering better ways of leading themselves and their teams.
If one just reads and practices, it's useless. If one reads, applies it to the self, figures out where the gaps are between what knowledge is gained versus what is inherent behavior, and tunes in those gaps, then it helps. Because if somebody says, oh, as a leader, you should not say this, you just go in there and stop saying that. Right? It's never going to help. Right? I mean, there are moments when you'd have to be tough and you'll have to be upset about things. It's human. But to say that I can never be upset, I'm a leader, and I cannot say this because I'm a leader, there's no human factor to it.
Beautiful.
And the human factor only comes when you know your gaps. Then it works. Otherwise it doesn't. Reading becomes just a time pass.
That's just a pastime, right? Until and unless it meets with your interpretation of what it means in the real world and its application.
Yes.
So actually, this is very important. We are talking about evolution. Times have changed, and it is particularly relevant to you because I borrow from one of your heroes from the past, from GE, from a Jack Welchian model of leadership. I think it was great leadership at that time. It was what the world needed, focus on execution, getting things done kind of a thing. And I still think that holds a place in today's world. But just like many other things, leadership has also evolved. Civil society has evolved, gender norms have changed. There's so much of change afoot. And why should leadership be the one that's still stuck and archaic? And the face of the new leader as of now, what do you think? Just if you can take us on a journey saying that this was a great way, or this was leadership behavior that used to get applauded, to what is the leadership behavior that we need as of now?
This is where the emotional quotient comes in. See, when I was a kid, to count, I had this abacus. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. These days, a newborn goes and learns numbers by figuring out what the password of the iPad is. Right? I mean, do you know 1? Yeah, 1. So the learning of numbers has changed, which means the learning pace is different, which means the learning methodology is different, which means the consumption of knowledge is different, which means the application of the same knowledge will be different. And now for me, if I try to apply my old abacus days to these days, it's never going to work.
Correct.
So how does one transition from here to there? And I think the transition can only happen when you're willing to open your eyes and see how the younger generation thinks. So I have people who are 50 plus years old working for me. I have people who are 30 years old working for me. And I also see people who are in their 20s. And you will see that their thought processes, their thinking is very different. And if you don't understand why they do what they do or say what they say, it's going to be very difficult because they are not going to accept the way I think. And I think that emotional quotient is going to become more and more and more important because the pace of change is a lot. It used to be during my father's time, it takes 40 years for a generational change. In my times, it takes 20 years. Nowadays, it takes 10 years or 5 years. And it's going to be worse as we go forward. Right? So adapting oneself quickly to the environment, right? Accepting it with agility is going to be absolutely essential. There is no point in even arguing about it. It is best to adapt with agility. And the only way to achieve it is through authenticity. If you cannot reach inside yourself and see who you are, maybe when I reach inside, deep inside, I find I'm not a leader. Maybe I'm not a people person. But then I know that if I'm not a people person, what do I have to do to become a people person?
Amazing.
And that, if people don't do, I think it's going to be harder. It is, life was a lot easier, I think.
You're absolutely right. I mean, today's CXO and the choices that they have to make, it's fairly flummoxing. And a lot of unlearning has to happen. And it's easier said than done. According to Marshall Goldsmith, one of the best executive coaches in the world, he says adult behavioral change is probably one of the toughest things that you will go through, because there is a period that you're kind of set in your ways, or you think that this is me, this is my belief system, this is my values, this is what I bring to the table, and I can't change. Or I don't want to change. And whereas the organization or the ecosystem surrounding that leader will be gently nudging them, I think you need to change. But this either inability, lack of awareness, denial, there are so many things that the CXO has to battle. And like you beautifully said, go inward.
And it's also very simple. Also understand, business never changed. Okay? You have a product, you sell, you get your sales. You make it, there's a cost. You add every expense, everything, all these nuances that a finance team does. Bottom line is you come out with X amount of cash in your hand, which is for you. If that is kept very clear, it doesn't matter which generation is addressing the problem of giving me the cash in my hand, then things become even simpler.
The fundamentals of business, the basic building blocks are...
And people lose track of it because we get lost in this whole leadership concepts.
Right.
I am going to change this behavioral pattern with this person. But the only behavioral pattern that person has to understand is do it whichever way you want. You've got this box of civility and a company culture. You got this technology. You got this customer base. And I need this much money in my hand at the end of the day.
Sure.
So go figure it out. And I see that works better because people think. And if people don't think, then they don't belong in that organization.
Amazing.
Right? And I think we can easily solve a lot of problems by making it simpler and simpler.
200%. 200%.
Right? And today it's very complicated. When you start going down this path of, human behaviors, it goes down a path of its own. And the whole business principles of, having a profit to invest wherever it needs to be invested, that gets lost a lot of ways. And I think at the leadership level, if that is not kept very, very front and center, along with the other things that go with it, it's going to be very hard. It gets very hard. That's why companies lose track.
I think, Kishore, see, the point is it's not an ends versus means kind of a conversation, because a reason an organization exists is to unlock value for its shareholders. I mean, fundamentally at the end of the day, right? It is. I mean, like you said, business principles are, the last 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, it's pretty much been the same. Yep. You create a product, you go to the world, you sell it, and you create and you extract fair value and you distribute it amongst your shareholders. That's the fundamental thing. The question that we're trying to figure a way out is the means are getting more into them under the microscope now. The means of those days and leadership those days was a little different. And the means to achieve those ends now, however, require a different set of eyes.
Correct.
Otherwise, most organizations will not have sustainability at the heart of their conversation. Right? Because sometimes sustainability is anti-business or can be seen as anti-business, or in some time it's a hard call. It's not an easy conversation to have at the first one go. Bingo, I got it. Sustainability, great business idea.
Well, anything that is a great business idea has to show the cash in hand. You want sustainability, I think it's the right thing to do. I absolutely believe in it, but it can never work unless there is a business case. Otherwise, humanity can only address a problem when there is a business case, because somebody has to pay for it, somebody has to receive the benefits. If the entire humanity is going to receive entire benefits, then the entire humanity will have to pay for it in some way,
sure,
so that the vehicles are created to implement it. And even during sustainability conversations, I'm very clear that if there is no profitable product that comes out for the future, sustainability will still continue to be a dream.
It'll just be in corporate boardrooms at the most. It will never really happen in the real world in that sense.
And governments can help with it, right? Governments can go in there. They provide subsidies to help the businesses in the beginning. take out the subsidies, and then the products have to come out, then the products are accepted by people, and they either pay a premium, which is what happens in some parts now,
Yes.
or with scale, economies of scale kicks in and the products become more affordable.
Absolutely.
And then it becomes a way of life. That's how
Yeah.
everything works. So
It is as simple. I mean, beautiful. Yeah. You said either this way, it does cost more and you will have to pay more. That's a very, very clear reality as we are now. And as more and more people adopt it, there'll be economies of scale. It'll be cheaper. More adoption will happen, and eventually,
and the technology improves.
Of course. That's like
I remember the days in India when it used to be 2 rupees, 2 rupee power with fossil fuel plants. And not too distant past. It was 2006. Today we're talking about 2 rupee solar power. Solar power in those days were 40 rupees when it was 2 rupee fossil fuel power. So I think it's come a long way.
Of course.
Today solar is everywhere because of the fact that the scale is now kicking in. Right? So that's on the business side.
Excellent. Kishore, one of my favorite questions that I ask all my CEOs is, what can other leaders in other ecosystems learn from a leader such as yourself, being at the forefront of industrial tech? What are some of the things that they can leave with when they watch this conversation?
So Jay, look, we are in the industrial technology. We are an industrial technology company. We develop cutting-edge technologies that power responsibly. When I say responsibly, it means reliability, it means efficiently, it means sustainably. Last but not the least, it means safely. A lot of our products, they transcend generations. So a product that we decide today, I want to make this. 10 years to design it, test it, fly it. Another 30 years in operation. Another 10 years of unwinding of the product. Right? So it goes through cycles within the 50 years. 5 decades. Wow. Defense business. Needless to say, it's a very, very long cycle business. Civil aerospace, products don't come out on a daily basis. Very few companies globally have the ability to even make these products, leave alone do it frequently. So I think there is a lot of, ours is more of a very long cycle business that requires a thinking that is very, very strategic, that is very, very visionary, that is able to project today into the future by learning from the past and making a decision and a bet which is very expensive and holding through that decision in spite of all the things that come in your way, seeing the product through and winning with that product out there. So that is the complexity of the business that we are in.
Not for the faint-hearted.
It is not for the faint-hearted, to say the least. To say the least. But like everything else, when there is a product, the product lasts, it hunts very well, it's very competitive, and it really creates a brand like none other. That's why Rolls-Royce has that brand.
Amazing.
Right?
Amazing.
And for us, we have to think strategically. It is not tactical sales, it is strategic sales. It is strategic business development. It is strategic investment. So strategy becomes everything. Right? That's the world we live in.
So would strategic thinking and operational capability almost become the core of your...
Yeah. Yes, because we do run a business.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be all strategic, but at the end of the day, if you don't succeed operationally and excel,
sure,
and gain the trust of all your stakeholders, the beautiful ideas can be actually run to the ground.
Sure.
Right? So I think it is very, very important to have the ideas, to bring the ideas to a good product, make sure the product hunts, and continue to operate it efficiently. And I mean financial and business efficiency. not product efficiency there.
I hear you.
Right?
One of the fondest quotes I have is from Mike Tyson's ex-boxing coach. His name is Cus D'Amato. And he says, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And this idea about strategy without the art of great execution, it's almost like the yin and yang, right? They kind of have to go hand in hand. Amazing. All right. As we all are on the path of becoming better versions of ourselves, would you like to share a behavioral quirk as a leader that you have had, that you're working on and you've turned the corner, and your experiments with that, your experiments with behavioral change?
Experiments with behavioral change. Yeah, I mean, like I said in the beginning, I think it is very easy when one is an individual contributor. It is about knowledge and delivery. When one moves up to leveraging knowledge of others and converging that knowledge to actionable items for deliverable outcomes, I think that's a very different skill set. And through every phase of my life, and I moved from technology into commercial, grew in the commercial side, then into business leadership, every phase I had to step back, because one constant that I had, and if you're expecting change, that's not it. I think the one constant I had was that I lost more and more control.
Wow.
Right? I find myself in a situation where I am probably with no control. Right? And adapting to that world takes time. It took me a long time. Every time I say that I am there, I've adapted to it, I find myself struggling with situation. And so that's a constant learning that happens. And once you're able to understand that that thing is never going to go away, and control is the factor that you're going to lose as you go higher and higher and higher, then the purpose has to become very clear and different. And that is going to be the only North Star that helps keep the sanity.
Beautiful.
I don't think anything else will help. I find myself in that spot quite often.
Because though it's very, very fascinating, because you're speaking about devolution of power, the higher up you go. And I don't know how many other CXOs would be able to articulate it as well as you have done. It's beautiful.
Yeah, well, it takes a lot out of an individual to be able to keep that in focus all the time. It takes a lot of energy. That takes a lot of my energy, let me be honest.
Sure, I'm sure.
I mean, finding a solution to something is easy. And telling people what to do is easier. But, I think, yeah. And I think that is not going to change. I think the world is only going to need more and more of that happening. And I think whoever you talk to, you'll probably find that as a common theme.
Amazing. Again, circling back to this coach conversation, which I referred to earlier, an interesting segue is Marshall used to coach Alan Mulally, who was the CEO of Ford for about 17 years. And then Marshall was talking to a bunch of us and he said, guess who's become executive coach now? Alan. I said, wow, that's so wonderful, because he used to talk about Alan as one of his best coachees. And he said, that's when I realized that what I bring to the table is not nearly as important as what the coachee brings to the table.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And, in my conversation with you, it's a very rewarding walk along into the mind of, and dare I say, heart of a CXO who's willing to walk the path in as much honesty and vulnerability and authenticity as possible.
It helps.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Awesome.